This is the mother of Iraqi marshes, a unique nature full of animals and birds. The birds have returned and are looking closely into the water, diving from time to time and hunting for fish. The buffaloes, on the other hand, line up and eat the reeds in the marshes. This is the marsh of Jabayish. This is the marsh of Jabayish, once a popular tourist destination, but now its own population is frustrated by water scarcity, with hundreds of parched and hungry families fleeing their historic homeland each year. Summer has not even arrived yet, but residents are terrified. They claim that coming events cast their shadows before. This spring, the water level has plummeted by nearly a meter compared to previous years. The drought brings back painful memories of the former regime's policies in the 1990s, when river water was diverted from the marshlands as punishment for tribal uprisings.
In terms of the current scenario and the inhabitants of marshland, I can say that it is a horrible year. Why? Because of severe water scarcity. People's livelihoods in the marshlands have decreased significantly. Those who rely on cattle will suffer the most because there will be no water, resulting in the loss of reeds and the devastation of plants in the marsh. Indeed, this year will be a year of great disaster for Iraq without water. I can say that the level of drought reaches 95%. Such droughts have only occurred during the previous regime. From 1991 to 1999, 9 years were unprecedentedly dry. As for those who raise livestock, this year I can say that if someone had 50 buffaloes, maybe 15, 20 of them would have died. That is, about 10% of them have died.
How do you react when you see water falling in the marshes?
It's a catastrophe, a tragedy and a loss of livelihoods. Thus, the majority of the marshlands inhabitants are fleeing.
This old man, amidst the emptiness and silence, has not yet left the battlefield, and he welcomes tourists alone. He gives visitors a delicious meal of fresh fish, but he is aware that summer is approaching and that the heat and water shortages will desolate his dining room. Did you catch these fish today?
Yes, we hunted them today.
How is fishing this year?
It is good.
What about the drought?
This year's drought is very severe. The level rises with rain and falls without rain.
How is the situation in the marshes?
Some have revived as a result of the recent rains, and the reeds are green. But when there is no water, they dry up.
How many of your relatives have fled due to drought?
Many folks have already done so. Their livestock vanished, and they relocated. We are one of the few remaining households. We can't leave because it's our village. That is all we have.
What would you do if the scenario remained the same?
Then we have to sell them and travel to the city. That water is critical to our survival. Yes, we will perish without the water of this marsh.
Some of the locals make a living by fishing, placing nets in the evening and catching fish in the morning. At 5 a.m., the two young men went into the marsh. They claim that in previous years they would bring back 3 boxes of fish, but today they are content with half that amount. People here claim they only need water. They do not need salary or government aid if there is water.
I leave around 6 o'clock in the morning and return at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, hoping to have a full bag. Previously, water was a boon from God, and our lives were dependent on the marsh. But now the situation is dire. We used to bring back 2 or 3 boxes. It was a God-given blessing. But there is now nothing left. This year has been particularly awful. We have received very little water. It is still winter and there is no water. It will all be dried out by summer. The most crucial factor is having access to water. We will be better off if there is water. But if there is no water, we will perish and have no other source of income. We don't have a wage or anything. All we have is God and this water.
They separate the larger fish for sale and discard the smaller ones, which will be eaten by birds. These birds rely on wetlands to hunt frogs and fish. When they see a prey in the water, they attack and hunt it like missiles. Some of the birds have moved from Africa, creating a magnificent landscape and attracting tourists. After 4 months, I went back to Jabayish. We've arrived at Ozum. Many drivers stop here to get a cup of coffee. For the record, the further south you travel, the more dry ground you see. Since this coffee is well known, I'd like to drink a cup of it before continuing my journey. We are close to the marshes, since we are near the Jabayish district. What drew my attention on my way was that I saw numerous little ponds near the road 4 months ago. But now this location shows how much the marsh dried out. Let's go check it. The individuals in the vicinity are visibly depressed and anxious. This elderly man has spent his entire life fishing, but he is now jobless and refuses to leave his reed house at any cost. How is the situation of fishing this year?
The water level used to be higher, there were fish, we had animals. But this year, many of our relatives fled. Few fish survived due to drought, and even the reeds vanished. There is no water left.
What is your job? Do you go fishing?
We used to go fishing, weave reed mats, and earn halal money, but we had to sell the animals due to water scarcity.
How many local residents have fled because of drought?
The majority of them fled. Animal owners, in particular, have fled totally after their animals perished.
How many of their animals perished?
Yes, many of them died. Water scarcity caused the deaths of 10 to 40 buffaloes in some cases.
Is there someone who can take me inside the marshes?
Yes, Ahmad can take you there.
Okay, Haji, thank you.
You are more than welcome.
Thank you. Ahmad accompanied us into the marsh. He has spent his entire life near this marsh. He used to take tourists into the marsh. But for the past few years, when summer arrives, he spends everything he has saved all spring. There were traces of a vast migration everywhere you looked. The downside is that the area that once exported agricultural products to other areas is now unable to feed its own people. I'd like to return to Haji Kinzer's eatery, where I last saw him 4 months ago, to see if he's still there. But I noticed that this corridor becomes narrower due to dropping water levels. Let us go to Haji's place. We arrived at the same place. I think he had fled away as well. Oh my God, I'm stunned. This area was fully submerged in water. Visitors used to come here. But today there are no Haji, no visitors, and no guests. We've seen tourists eating fish at this location before. But I assume he departed owing to a lack of water. And it is so hot that I doubt tourists will come here. Let's go inside for a closer look. This occurred only after 4 months. There were several young boys, the last time that I visited here, that came from Baghdad and other places, but now no one is coming. The rivers of Iraq provide 90% of the country's water. However, as a result of neighboring countries' water policy, the rivers are becoming narrower every year. Water coming from neighboring countries was 80 million cubic meters per year in 1970. But it is less than 50 million cubic meters now. As part of the GAP project, Turkey constructed 22 major dams and 45 minor dams on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. To fill its dams entirely, Turkey needs 2 years of blocking Tigris River off completely from Iraq. Iran has also constructed 14 dams with a total capacity of 1.9 billion cubic meters of water, further drying up the Tigris River. and plans to divert the rivers through tunnels about 150 kilometers long Kurdistan region and Iraq and to the southern cities of its country. As a result, Iraq's marshes are thirsty, and people are hungry and bored of waiting for water from neighboring nations to flood once more. This is the river Euphrates. We're almost in the middle of the river, and the water level has dropped dramatically compared to 4 months ago. On the other hand, there were a lot of dead fish on the river's shore that smelled so bad that you couldn't even go by them. Reeds have also decreased remarkably. And this man claimed that the number of fish had drastically decreased. They used to hunt a lot of fish worth 50 to 60,000 dinars, but now they're hoping for 10,000. The water level has dropped dramatically, and it is now nearly 1.5 meters deep. Muqtada Jassim, who is only 17, already takes care of his family alongside his younger brother, fishing in the scorching sun from morning to evening. But each day, he has a better understanding of the disaster. Their job is difficult since they throw the net every time in the hopes of catching a fish. But most of them are dead. Why do you throw away dead fish?
They are not edible. No one wants them. The majority of the fish are now dead.
How much money do you make from fishing on a daily basis?
10 to 15,000 dinars.
How much did you previously earn?
Between 200 and 250,000 dinars.
We discussed the poor state of fishing, and here is one kind of fishing, which we saw even in Kurdistan. They put electricity in the water, which kills all organisms, great and little, and all species. They complain that there are fewer fish than previously, but they are unaware that this is one of the causes of biodiversity loss. Buffaloes are valuable livestock assets in the region, but they are also not safe from the drought. They weigh roughly a ton and have milk full of protein and calcium in addition to the meat. Their lives are secured if there is water. They walk into the marshes in the morning and graze among the reeds until sunset. But in the summer, they face a harsh and uneven situation, and dozens or hundreds of them perish. According to the owners, they heavily depend on the buffaloes and must migrate to cities if there is no water. Ali is an animal owner, and the drought has killed the majority of his buffaloes. He is in his early ages, and it is time to save some money for his future. However, the drought and poverty have caused him to focus on today rather than tomorrow. It was quite interesting 4 months ago, because the community was positioned in the center of the marsh, but it is now completely dry. It has lost its lovely scene. We've been here before when there was water, but it's all dried up now. We came before. There were water, but now there is no water.
Yes, there was water. It was a God-given blessing. But now we have nothing. No water, animals have perished, and we need to buy water, animal feed, wheat, and hay. We used to pick and sell reeds from a marsh near here. It was a divine blessing. We used to go fishing, but those days are long gone.
Nearly 55,000 people live in the Jabayish area near the marsh, with more than 60% of them being farmers and hunters. According to the International Organization for Migration, over 3,500 families near the marshes have migrated in 2022. And the mayor of Jabayish district claimed that 1,200 of them were from their district.
When the river's water level drops, it has a direct impact on the residents of the area. Hundreds of families have been displaced, and they have relocated to cities such as Karbala, Basra, Najaf, and others in search of work. As a result, we ask the central government to step up its efforts with Turkey, because as far as I know, Turkey supplies more than 85% of the Euphrates water. The Euphrates River is the district's sole source of water. The Euphrates River is the only source of water for Jabayish. When the level of Euphrates decreases, that would have a direct impact on the people here.
Residents near the marshes live in precarious conditions, and the further the water level drops, the emptier the pockets, and the more desperate the people become. Old and young work together here, but as they say, they are struggling to make ends meet. They are taught to live near the marshes from childhood. But if the situation continues like this, there may be no water in which to sail until Ali grows up. Iraq is one of the 5 most vulnerable countries to climate change. Dams built by neighboring countries on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers have dried out thirsty marshes and rivers. Tens of thousands of families have relocated near the marshes, but this is only the beginning, with an estimated 7 million people displaced in Iraq over the next few decades, if a solution is not found.